Hey folks, welcome to Cooking with Stephen and Jacqueline. Today we're going to be smoking a rack of St. Louis ribs using B&B cherry wood chunks. We'll also be seasoning the ribs with 2 rubs, DrunkenChefBbq S.P.G and a sweet BBQ rub. So let's sit back and enjoy the ride.
Well folks, let's go prep our St. Louis ribs, and here's our ingredients.
You will need a rack of St. Louis ribs, S.P.G, BBQ Rub and BBQ Sauce of your choice, brown sugar, unsalted butter and equal parts of water and apple cider vinegar.
So folks, here we have our ribs already cut to St. Louis style. Here I'm just taking the kitchen shears to carefully remove the cryovac bag that the ribs are packed in. You want to carefully do this without damaging the ribs and also the spilling of any of the liquid that is inside of there. After cutting the cryovac lengthways, you want to make 2 slits crossways that the ribs can easily be removed. Now that this is done, the ribs can easily be removed as 1, 2, 3. As you can see, the ribs are easily being removed and the liquid remains in the cryovac bag. After doing this, you want to carefully discard the cryovac bag in the trash. After doing this, you want to take some paper towel and pat the ribs down on both sides. I also have some foil laid down in the sheet pan, and this makes for easy cleanup. Now that this is done, you want to take your butter knife and start to remove that membrane. And of course, you know we're on camera, so it's going to give a bit of trouble. After you lift up that membrane, you want to take a paper towel so you can get a firm grip so you can pull it off. In most instances, it pulls off all in one, but sometimes it pulls off in a couple pieces. That's not a problem. Now that this is done, you want to take your knife and carefully remove some of that fat that may not render. You want to take your time when doing this. You do not want to go deep into the meat. Now that we have finished removing all of the fat that we don't want on the back side, it's time to flip the ribs over and see what we have to remove on the top side. After flipping over the ribs, you will observe that there is a thin end to that rack. You want to cut out that last bone. The reason for cutting out this last rib is because the meat is a lot thinner and it is going to cook a lot faster, and it also makes for a good snack for the pitmaster himself. After removing the last bone, it's time to carefully remove the unwanted fat on the top side of your ribs. Now doing this is not necessary, but I like to do it because it makes for better presentation, also it makes for better eating. After trimming off the unwanted fat, here I'm taking my trusty kitchen shears to trim off any stragglers and also to round off the edges of the rack of ribs. So boys and girls, now that our ribs are all nicely trimmed up, it's time to season them. I'm going to be using 2 layers of seasoning. Our first one is going to be an S.P.G from DrunkenChefBbq. I will have a link to his channel in the show notes below. So let me tell you, I've tasted this seasoning straight out of the bottle and it's absolutely phenomenal. As you can see, it got a bit clumpy, and this is due to the humid weather that we have here on the islands, but it's still going to work just as fine. Now that we have gotten our first layer of seasoning down, it's time for our second layer of seasoning, and this is a homemade rub, which I call the sweet rub. I will have the full ingredients written down in the show notes below. But you can use any seasoning of your choice. I just happen to like using this one because I have all of the ingredients readily available in my pantry. Now that we have finished seasoning the backside of the ribs, it's time to give it a flipperoo, and we're going to season the top side or the presentation side, repeating the same process as we have seasoned the backside of the rack of ribs. Now that the ribs are all seasoned up, you want to gently pat in the rub, never rub the rub. And of course, you don't want to forget to season the sides because you want all those flavors popping throughout the ribs. Well folks, our ribs are all nicely seasoned up, also our pitmaster snack. Here I have our seasoned rack of ribs on a wire rack. I'm going to let this sit in the fridge overnight, and in the meanwhile, if you like what you see,
don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and click the post notifications for more.
Well folks, here's our rack of ribs that has been sitting in the fridge overnight. We're going to let this come up to room temperature. In the meanwhile that's happening, I'm going to show you how I set up my cheddar for some low and slow cooking. So folks, this is how I set up my cheddar for some indirect cooking. There are my lump charcoal. I also have a couple pieces of B&B's all natural cherry wood, and this is going to give us all the smoke we need for our ribs. Here I have a small loaf pan which I'm going to add some water to. This is also going to help with the humidity in the cheddar. Here I'm just going to light a small section of the coals, and this is going to give us our low and slow cook. Now that we have lighted a small section of coals, this is going to travel and ignite the unlit coals over a period of time. Now I'm just going to add some water to our water pan, and this is going to help keep our ribs moist. So folks, now it's time to set our grill grate down and clean it. Here I'm going to use half of an onion, and this was taught to me by Rick's Barbecue and Specialties. I will have a link to his channel in the show notes below. As you can see, the half an onion is in the hot coals. I'm also adding a chunk of cherry wood, and this is going to kick off that smoke. Well folks, let's get our grill grate down and put the cover on and let our cheddar come up to temp. And I'll bring you guys back when we are ready to put on our rack of ribs. Well folks, about 15 minutes has gone by, so now it's time to get our rack of ribs on. Here I'm placing them opposite the hot coals, and you know all about that. We're gonna get some indirect cooking going on. And of course, you don't want to forget our little snack for the pit master himself. So let's get the cover on and let the cheddar do its thing. See you guys in the next 45 minutes to an hour when we check on those ribs. And there you can see we got some nice smoke rolling. Well folks, we are a little over an hour, and here you can see our ribs are looking nice. It's taking on a nice color. Here I'm just checking to see if the rub is starting to set, and yes it is. It's also looking a bit dry, so it's time for some spritzing. Here I have in a bottle equal parts apple cider vinegar and water. I'm going to be spritzing every 20 minutes or so. This is going to keep our ribs nice and moist. So let's put the cover on and let the cheddar do its thing. Well folks, we are about an hour and 45 minutes into the cook. Here I'm just going to give our ribs a spin around to make sure we get some even cooking going on. You may not have to do this depending on the smoker you have. And whilst the cover is off, we're going to give it a spritz again to make sure our ribs keep nice and moist. So here's a bit of a close-up, and you can see that the ribs are coming along nicely. So let's put the cover on, and I'll bring you guys back at the 2.5 hour mark. And we are at the 2.5 hour mark, and you can see the ribs are looking mighty fine. The internal temp is about 145 for those who might want to know what the internal temp is. Well folks, we are about at that 3 hour mark, and our ribs are looking mighty fine. It definitely has a great color. Here I'm picking up the ribs to just do that simple bend test, and you can see we're getting some nice bend to those ribs. So now that our ribs has that nice bend to it and our rub is set, we're going to take it inside and get it wrapped up in foil, and this is going to help tenderize those ribs. Well folks, you know the drill. I'm going down with 3 parts of unsalted butter. Then we're going to add a drizzle of honey, and this is going to add some sweetness and also to help give the ribs a bit of a sheen. Next, we're going to sprinkle a bit of brown sugar, and this is going to give us a next level of sweetness. Next, we're going to add some of our homemade sweet barbecue rub, and this is going to take it up a notch with flavor. And lastly, we are going in with some of our Kinder's Honey Hot Barbecue Sauce, and this is going to bring us some heat and some sweet. So drizzle as little or as much as you want. Now it's time to take your rack of ribs and lay that meat side down, and you're going to repeat that same process on the back side of the ribs. So let's listen to some music as that goes down. Well boys and girls, now that we have repeated that process on the backside of the ribs, it's time to wrap them in some heavy duty foil, and make sure and wrap them tightly. This method is called a Texas cheat, and the ribs are going to steam in all those goodies that I put in there. Now that the ribs are all nicely tucked away, I'll meet you guys out by the cheddar. Well folks, we are back outside by the chiller, and here you can see our coals are burning nice and slow. It's now time to place our ribs meat side down opposite the hot coals. I'm going to let this go for another 45 minutes to an hour or until the rib gets nice and tender. Your time may vary depending on the temp or the cooker that you are cooking on. So I'll bring you guys back when we are ready for the next step. Well folks, it has been little over an hour, so we're going to check our ribs for tenderness. You want to be very careful when opening the foil because there's going to be a lot of steam coming out there. So folks, it's time to check on the tenderness, and you can see that some of the bones are already starting to pop. Now I'm using the toothpick to make sure that we're probing nice and tender, and yes we are. So folks, let's get these ribs on the inside because we have one more step before we bring them out back on the grill. So folks, now that we're on the inside, our next step here now is to create a foil boat, and that's pretty simple enough to do. All you got to do is roll up the sides of the foil, and in a miracle of time your foil boat is done. Now that you have finished made your foil boat, get yourself a long pair of tongs and give your ribs a good old flipperoo. And that is as easy as 1, 2, 3. So here you can see we got some nice pullback on the bones. Now we're going to hit it with some of our Kinder's Honey Hot Barbecue Sauce. And let me tell you, I have tasted this straight from the bottle and it is one of the best barbecue sauce I have tasted so far. Now that you have finished applying the sauce, all you want to do is take a silicone brush and gently finish spreading on that sauce. So folks, let's play a game. I want you to hit me up in the comments after this short b-roll and give me a rating of 1 to 10 of how the ribs are looking so far. And in case if you're wondering what mark I would give myself, I'll probably give myself a 3. After all, I'm not a pit master by no means. After saucing the ribs, back on the grill it goes for about another 15 to 20 minutes so that the barbecue sauce can get nice and tacky. And in the miracle of time, 20 minutes has gone by and our barbecue sauce has gotten nice and tacky on those ribs. So we're going to carefully carry them on the inside, tin them with some foil and let it rest for about 15 minutes before we cut into them. So now that the ribs has rested for about 15 to 20 minutes, we are going to carefully place them on the cutting board and then cut into them and see how we did. So let's get this bad boy turned over where you can see exactly how I'm cutting those ribs individually. Oh yes, our ribs are super tender. We're cutting through this like butter. The total cook time for these ribs is approximately 4.5 hours. 3 hours unwrapped, so you will get some smoke, an hour and a half wrapped for them to get nice and tender, and about 15 to 20 minutes to get the barbecue sauce nice and tacky. Once again, I want to give a big shout out to DrunkenChefBbq for sending this out to me. I will have a link to his website in the show notes below. So let's pick out a rib from the center and see what we have. And there you see we have a little smoke ring. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. So let's take a quick bite and see if we are biting nice and tender. And oh yes, as you can see we are. Well, it's time for a drive-by. Let's go!
So boys and girls, here's our delicious smoked hot honey St. Louis ribs, and it was so tasty. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the post notifications for more videos. See you all on our next cooking journey, and we're out until next time.